Oh hey, so I'm recording a video today to talk about what is unfortunately probably the last build I play this league, and that is a quad CoC Sab. This is not the first time I've played this build. I played it initially in Crucible League when Manaforged was released. It's one of the first videos on my YouTube if you want to check that out. But anyways, I can go over the high level of how this build works. So essentially you have a primary cast on crit setup that triggers two skills. Just because Blast Ring hits so frequently, it's generally better to put a second skill as opposed to just another support gem. But so you have Blast Ring, Cast on Crit, Inspiration, some support gem, and then two skills, and you want to get that cost down to around 1 to 3 mana in that range. And then you have a second Blast Ring, Cast on Crit setup with Mana Forge and Life Tap that will trigger every time you attack with the first Blast Ring, and that will also trigger two skills. So essentially when you attack, it will trigger two skills, and then it will trigger a skill that triggers two skills. And each Blast Ring is going to hit a ton of times, so you get an absurd amount of triggers per single attack. And since we're a Sab, let's get doubled up because we have the trigger bots. So anyways, this setup, for example, is Blast Ring, Cast on Crit, Inspiration, increased critical damage, Ice Nova, Frostbolts, plus Arc. And then my Manaforged Blast Ring, Cast on Crit setup has another Ice Nova, Frostbolts, and a Lightning Conduit of the Heavens. I'm also wearing an Azanas to trigger Frostbolt and GMP so the Ice Novas can expand from them. But yeah, I didn't want to get too into the weeds with the particular setups of the last build just because it doesn't really matter. It's mostly just choose 4 skills you like or 2 skills you like and trigger them each twice. Like here I'm using 2 Arcs, Glacial Cascade, and a Conduit of the Heavens. But like another setup I like, I guess, was GMP, Ice Spear, and Fireball. Surprisingly, Fireball AoE felt pretty good because like that little pop that it does when it dies actually helped quite a bit. But you know, depending on what you pick, obviously it's going to influence your clear and your single target. Like just using 2 Ice Novas is going to be incredible single target because it can expand from Frostbolt when it has about 195% effectiveness add damage when it does that. But since it can expand from 4 Frostbolts, it has about 800% effectiveness of added damage, which is very high. But I did not love the clear of it. It's pretty decent in like tightly packed maps, like things like beach or indoor maps, where it's just like the maps are just dense. But this also comes with a pretty big downside in having used Azanas, and this build is pretty socket starved. So those are just things to keep in mind. But like I said, it's really just choose what you like. I'm just a simple Ice Nova enjoyer. But I did end up switching to, that was what this intro video was, something that I felt would have a little bit better clear speed. Like I'm scaling projectile speed pretty hard, just using Spark, Frostbolt, and Ice Spear. Frostbolt's surprisingly decent clear, just because it has infinite piercing and it goes really far. Spark obviously is really nice in indoor maps because it just bounces off the walls and hits everything. And then I have a, even though it's not a projectile, I have Ice Nova to help with a little bit of AoE coverage and single target, because again, that 800% effectiveness of added damage is quite a lot. I guess now is a good time to actually talk about some of the build decisions that I made. So the main package here is just Atulas, Anathema, Ralakesh. The reason I'm using the Atulas is because I just had a bunch of other gear that did not have life on it, similar to like the trap build I talked about last time. So I was using a replica dragonflight and Azanas. I did switch to a +2 amulet, but same deal. No room for life on it because I wanted to reduce mana cost. But you don't need to use Atulas. In fact, I think like Loreweave plus Eternal Dam or Lightning Coil is realistically probably better. It's just a combination of Atulas is good enough, and I'm a little lazy. So to like having to fix your either get a bunch of Chaos Res or a bunch of Lightning Res to fix Lightning Coil can be a pain when you're a build that's using a lot of uniques. Other things that are really important with this build, more than anything, this is like the most important. You need to get your main skill to be around 95 to 99% reduced mana cost, so that, because like as you can see here, I have a very small amount of unreserved mana. You can go even lower than this, but you want that main skill to cost like 1, and then your spells you're triggering to cost like 1 or 2 mana, because when you're a Sab and you're trigger bots, all your mana costs are doubled. So it adds up very quickly. Like, for example, in this build, I'm triggering 2 skills around 10 times a second per cast on crit setup. So the numbers get like truly absurd. Like, leech only goes so far, so you want to get it pretty low. And the way you can do that is, that's what I have listed here. Like, once you have inspiration in a flask, it's around 63%. So you really just need another like 35%. And the way I was getting the rest is a timeless jewel, a few rare jewels, a few jewelry craft mods, and then the mana mastery gets you there. Now, granted, if you have something like a mage blood, this gets ridiculously easy, because that flask effect goes from like 25 to, I think, around like 45, or something in the ballpark of that. Maybe it's like 38, but you know what I mean. It's significantly less commitment. And I guess this is probably a good time to talk about, I don't know if you guys noticed, when I'm bossing, I don't have any flask nodes. I'm not a pathfinder. I don't have any of that stuff. But I do have the Surgeon's mod on my Topaz flask, which says whenever I deal a critical strike, I will gain a flash charge. And that mod does have a 0.1 second cooldown, but because this build hits so frequently, you will never not get that charge so like every second you're gonna get 10 charges. So I have perma uptime when I'm attacking on that particular flask. It can be any flask you want. It's just solving mana on a build like this is very difficult without having that flask mod, because getting the rest of that isn't that bad, but getting another 25% is like quite difficult. Like, you really run out of slots, and you don't want to commit that much more of your tree and your gear to fixing that, when you can, just get gain a flash charge and crit plus reduce mana cost on your flask. Yeah, feel free to skip this if you just want the POBs. The 2 that I was going off of, I'll include in the show notes. But if you do want to hang around for the discussion and get into details, talk about the specifics here. The Sab nodes are pretty stock for cast and crit, because you're always going to take like Clockwork, Perfect Crime, and then reduce damage taken. Explosive Expert's insane for damage, but you might not take it and take the area damage node if you were like using something like Leadership's Price, since you can't naturally get a Chill, Shock, and Ignite. Unless you use Skitterbots to get 2 of those, but even then. Anyways, this stuff's pretty normal. It's coming down to get life suppression, crit, and crit, power charge, ghost dance, because we're using grace, more crit. And then this is pretty important. This militant faith with this reduced mana cost per devotion, this gives us 10% reduced mana cost because we have 100 devotion here. And then we're taking this mana mastery, we're taking it here because it gets us more devotion. Taking reduced mana cost again, so this is 20% reduced mana cost just in this little section. Ideally, this isn't flipped, it just happens to be. That's the one I have. Then we're taking this increased damage per charge mastery because we're using Ralakesh, which gives us 3 endurance charges, 3 frenzies, and then all of our power charges. The only reason we're using Ralakesh, honestly, is just for the frenzies, because with Inner Conviction you can't get frenzies, which is a shame, because on Quivers you can have this this craft for frenzy charge on critical strike. If I could click the thing properly. Yeah, increase global critical strike. This is just an unveil. But we can't do that because we are in conviction, so we cannot gain frenzy charges. So Ralakesh gets around that. And the endurance charges are a little nice because I was using determination earlier, but we don't really have enough armor scaling in this tree to justify it. And Zeltri's so much more damage, and I'm a bit of a damn main. So yeah, the Ralakesh are not insane on this build. You could definitely just use rares or something else, like something with Scorch would be nice. Yeah, anyways, very important. Getting your mana cost, like I mentioned, is one of the most important parts of this build. If you don't do this, you can't really play the build. Onto the Cluster Jewel, ideally you have Prismatic Heart and Sadist. Prismatic Heart because we're using a lot of uniques, so the resistances go a really long way. Sadist because this node's insane. It's literally 60% increased damage if you deal Tri-Elements and crit, which we are. I have one crit cluster, basics of pain, pressure points. This could be quick getaway or another node. Pressure points is the important one. Basics of pain is not. Fitting in a little bit more reservation, and the one that we're choosing for our aura, again for the resistance reason, Sublime Form, because we can use the resistances. As you can tell, I'm very close to being uncapped. Now on to the actual gearing. I'll just go over the import stuff, because like things like this are just going to be accuracy, resistances, proj speed feels nice for Frostbolt, etc. And then like, you know, just gonna have suppression resistances here. Like all this stuff's gonna be pretty normal stuff, nothing too crazy. Reduced mana cost where you can craft it on prefixes on items, which is just jewelry. Like if you're using a rare here, you can also have it crafted as well. The big one is the belt. You want to get at least 15 CDR on your belt, which is the Veiled Craft or T2 Shaper or Crusader, I believe, as well. Because that, alongside getting CDR here or on a That Which Is Taken, gets you to 52 cooldown recovery speed, which means that your cast and crit setups can trigger 10 times a second from 7.5, which is quite a big damage boost. And then the other really important thing is crafting the bow, which is just getting either buying one or getting a level 75 to 83 spine bow. Ivory shaped, by the way, obviously. Ivory bow would be better, but people don't tend to list those, or they don't drop. I'm not actually sure which, because the attribute requirements are pretty steep. You don't naturally have this much deck, so you actually have to get that. But to craft it, it's pretty simple. It's just shrieking or deafening essences of woe till you get cast on crit, and then you can multi-mod to finish it. But generally what I like to do is I like to do cannot roll attack mods, exalt, and praying to get that damage pen right there, or +1 socket of gems. Pen's a little better because it affects both of our cast and crit setups, where socket gems only affects one. You can also craft +2 to socket support gems if you have an empower in there as well. But again, you ideally would get the pen. One thing I will go over is, so this as an ass, this +1 power charge one doesn't exist in Hardcore Trade. Otherwise I've used it, but as an ass is very steep on this build, because if you have 2 cast on crit setups that are 12 sockets, and you have a Frostbolt and GMP in here, that is 14 sockets accounted for, which gets you really small amount of sockets left. Like I wasn't able to use Arcanist Brand on this because I just literally couldn't if I wanted to use all these curses. You could do something like drop a blessing. I had to drop my guard skill already, so it's very steep. The sockets are really tight. GG needs to make an unset ring that has 2 sockets, or fix the hungry loop. But yeah, anyways, the other things that are really important on the actual gearing aspects are the base crit here is really nice. I think I am crit capped without this, but you might not be. And this is with Assassin's markup. It's kind of nice to be a little overcapped so that you're like mostly crit capped when you're mapping, because without a Assassin's, it just feels bad to whiff is all I was gonna say. But other than that, this is like a flex slot. It doesn't really matter what you get in the last one. You get move speed for frenzy, or crit multi for power charge, etc. There's a ton of stuff you get. You get these mods on That Which Is Taken as well. Yeah, so one last thing to talk about is this Proj version that I ended up playing a little bit more of, and I like a little better, even though the DPS is significantly worse. It's basically cutting this top part with the power charges and the cold pen, all that stuff, to travel down to the Proj speed nodes down here, and then changing the quiver to a double Proj speed mod one, like a feathered arrow quiver with the Proj speed mod, and then dropping as an ass for a suppression trigger helmet. Ideally, mine was not like this, like be multi-modded to have Fizz Taken as well as getting the Eater implicit for Fizz Taken as to help with your Fizz mitigation. Funny enough, I only have 3 curses in the helmet right now because frickin' trigger bots, man. You don't want it to do this, but it triggers your curses twice. So if you have 4 curses in there, you have to be able to afford to pay for 4 curses 2 times, which I do not have. That's like 140 mana. I can pay for once, so I'm hand blasting one of the curses. It's freaking trigger bots. And And then the other difference is I'm using another crit medium cluster and getting another base crit here to make up for the power charge that was lost up here in the additional crit. Oh, and just another thing is, I feel like I got a steal on this. Some guy sold this to me for 15 divines, like what a sweetie, you know? But felt like a steal. The vitality mod is very important because you have a very high life expenditure because of this manaforged trigger. You can make up for it a little bit with Doriani's Lesson, but like to over sustain this Vitality Watcher's Eye, very important. Hatred you can make up the crit elsewhere, like even if you had to use something like a Diamond Flask or whatever. But this can't really be made up for unless you drop a Tula's, in which case you can get a ring with 15 life gain on spell hit mod on it, or 18 with Catalyst. Which would mostly make up for this Watcher's Eye mod. You know, there are multiple ways to solve this essentially. But yeah, I'm including both of these POBs in the show notes, like I mentioned. If I don't see you guys for a while, I'll still be on YouTube responding to comments and stuff. But thank you so much for watching, and good luck with the rest of the league. Later.